Well, good evening. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to another segment of Urban Academics Roundtable tonight. I am so excited to introduce tonight's guest, who is taking a seat all the way from Syracuse, New York. Someone I've known for over 30 years, if I'm going to say that out loud, but it's true. I have known her for over 30 years, and I'm just not going to take up a whole lot of time because I know tonight is one of those nights where we need all the time we're going to get. So I'm just going to pass this over to Lady K, who will introduce tonight's guest seat taker, which is Theresa Giles. Theresa is an author, an educator, and an entrepreneur who has raised 6 children who are all, 100% of them, overachievers. So we want to tap into her brain for how she was able to do that, not only for the community, but for her house. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Kay, who is going to introduce Theresa Giles.
Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure, as always. Welcome. I'm grateful and humble, as every week I must, state that being at this round table with all the brilliance and the sun that shines and the light that we receive from the moon, I can feel it vibrating through this medium that we're using. Grateful to you, Sister Trina, for having the vision and foresight. So, as we begin tonight, we are graced with the honor and my privilege to introduce Lady Theresa Giles from Syracuse, New York, where it is known for what? Snow.
Weather. Definitely known for snow.
Oh, absolutely. I love that part of the country, though. I had the honor of going to school up there for a couple of years in Cuca College. But welcome to the round table. As mentioned previously by Trina, Sister Giles graces us with her presence and her wisdom, and we're just going to pick your brain tonight because we want to hear your story. We want to hear how you have overcome and won and battles and, just what it took for you to persevere and be able to, speak, your truth and your whole story. So thank you for that. And as you begin, just take into consideration all that we are looking forward to from you. I'm not putting no pressure on you, though. But it is a pleasure to introduce you to the Urban Academics Roundtable 7. Welcome, Sister Lady Theresa Giles, Syracuse, New York.
Before you get started, Theresa, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping rules. One of them is that those around the table may have questions, but they will save them to the end, so you'll be able to talk about you and your story and your journey and how you spend your energy shaping the next generation.
So, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank the Lord Jesus for this privilege and this opportunity to share at this round table.
Amen.
With you all, people who I think has great substance. So I like to be in the company of iron that sharpens iron. So I want to thank you, Trina, for this privilege, an opportunity to share with you all. And hopefully I'll have something that I can be a receptor and a depositor tonight. before it's all said and done. So, to begin, of course, I guess the subject on the table is urban education. And yes, I did have 6 biological children, and then I also had a grandchild that I raised for 14 years. And so it was not an easy task getting on the track that's called education. I think I became more prone to it once I realized that I could do it. I needed to do it to be the example for my children. So post-high school years, I graduated from high school at 16 years old, young, pregnant, didn't want to be in school with a baby. But then I went on to go to a business school, but then graduated from that. But having an opportunity, I said because I mentioned it to someone last night that's on this line, working for Georgetown University, got to go to school free, didn't quite, and flunked out, smoking weed back in the 80s, then having the same opportunity to go to Syracuse University College and flunked out, smoking weed. This wasn't discipline. But realizing as I got on baby number 5 and I was about to become a statistic, because I had food stamps and now I had baby number 5. And just really, this was the turning point. I was a Sunday school teacher. I read one scripture that changed the trajectory of my life, which says I was made in God's image and in his likeness. And I said, well, if he could do anything, I can. And that was a turning point and the door opener for me to decide to go back to school. For many years, I said it was only for white people. And so that's 19 years after high school that I decided to go back. And so then having 5 children, I realized if I needed to do it, I needed to do it to show them so that I can set the trend in my home for education. And that's what I did. So having 5 kids, I went back and became a trailblazer with the help of the Lord, and then got pregnant with the 6th child while in school, and was due to have that baby about 40 days before graduation, and they allowed me to come home, have them, and go back and walk the stage. And I did well. I think I know I graduated with a 3.8 with 6 kids, and but I will give all credit that with the help of the Lord. It was totally different because I had a help that I never relied on the first time. So having said that, my children, when I graduated from college, I didn't get a job like everyone else. When I cried because I had a former felony from a previous lifestyle about 13 years before I graduated from college, that stood in the way of me trying to get a job like the average Joe. So when I prayed and asked God what to do with my life, he showed me daycare and take care of kids. And never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would go to college, get my first, I got an associate degree the first time, then I got the bachelor's degree, that I would end up at home with children. But because I still had school children at home, that was my calling. Unbeknownst to me, my children had prepared me for my calling. And so then I became really interested in the education of children because, of course, up until this day, I probably have cared for over maybe 900 children collectively. And so I saw the need for our children to be educated. I saw of the 900 children over, it's probably been out of the 900, only 40 fathers was in 900 children's lives. If 40, and I may not be hitting the number. It might have been 20 of the 940. Most of the fathers were incarcerated. Most of the fathers were missing. Most of the fathers, and those children, I took a liking, and I cared for them in such a way to make sure that I could try to pour into them and hire staff that could helped me to pour into them because I was a fatherless child. I met my father at 20 years old. So that became the catalyst for me really having an interest in children. And there were these the urban children because those are the ones that I care for. And so then I had a couple of my daughters who graduated. One of my daughters worked with me while she was in college, and then she graduated. So she had got a degree from Syracuse University in education and special needs. She had a dual degree, and then and I had another daughter that went on to get a degree from Syracuse University and then go to law school and graduated. Then another one of my daughters became a nurse. And we all put our hand to the plow. I had sons. Now I'm not going to, I got to share it all. I have a son. I had two sons that went in and out of jail. The one I had, the 14-year-old child, the 14-year child that was from a father who I sowed those seeds in his life when he was little, being a drug dealer. So then I ended up sowing seeds, even though I came out the life. I was short-lived in the life, only 3 years. But the seeds you sow come back, and that child, he ended up tapping into drugs. And so he had a 14-year, not at one time, but over the years, he spent about 14 years in prison, going back and forth. So, but I'm proud to say that every child I had out my belly were high school graduates, and then I have 3 that are college graduates, and then one son that is entrepreneur, and the other one that did a lot of time in jail, back and forth. Now he is gainfully employed and has been for almost 2 years, and this is the first time he had that run like that in his life. And then I got one that need to come home, but he gets out this year. He did like about 3 years. And so that's the story. So I'm pro-education all the way across the board when it comes to children, and it definitely takes a village because there is absentee parenting in all these kids' life. And even if parents are there, I notice parents does not have the interest in their children's education. We in an era where there's a lot of cell phones, a lot of internet, a lot of Facebook, and these parents are putting 100%. And I still have to say things to certain of my own children today that you're not putting enough time in, because I monitor. I got 12 grandchildren, and I monitor them in terms of their education, and I see the ones that are behind, and then I see the ones that excel, and it's because I have a daughter that pours in. My educated daughters, they pour into their children. The ones that's not educated, they don't pour in. So then I help with those kids even to this day. So we have to. If we don't, they will get lost in the sauce, you know. And that's where I'm at. And so right now, today, I thought I was going to hang up my gloves and I wouldn't work with children no more. I closed in 2018. And now I prayed, asked God what to do with my life, because, of course, I had wrote a book in 2013, and then I ended up opening a daycare center after that one. And then I revised the book last year. And then the book was transitioned into a stage play, which debuted in Chicago last November. So I thought I was about to do the next play here in Syracuse May 1st, but the corona took precedent over that. So it went on the back burner, and it's supposed to be rescheduled for October, not knowing if that's going to really be the case. So then, you know, I just been praying, like, Lord, what shall I do with my life? Because, you know, and then, you know, the funds have gotten to the place that I have to do something. And so he showed me back to daycare. And so, but the difference in me having a daycare, my daycare is a little different than my average daycare that I see around here. I've taken kids on trips and given them exposure to see things that they never would have seen. And our daycare incur the expenses because we believe in exposure. We believe in so that they can dream big and see big and want big. And so I work a lot personally when I'm in the daycare. Though I'm the executive, I've always work with the school agers. I come in every class. I motivate all children of all ages, but I work closely with school-age children because I want to pour into them, because it was I who got to Georgetown University, pushed through high school, and was still reading on an 8th grade level and had to get tutors. And so I remember that hard body when it comes to children reading and doing all that stuff. So that's where I'm at, and I'm about to do this all over again. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Who is that saying hello?
Copeland.
Hello, Mr. Copeland.
Hello.
How are you? Welcome, welcome, welcome. There are several people on the call right now, and I'm just going to run through those that I don't have names for. Would someone tell me who is 315-877? That must be you, Theresa.
Right.
Okay, let me get you. Hold on. Theresa, hold on. Because you just named wireless caller, girl. And for those of you who just joined in, I heard a few different clicks come in. Tonight's roundtable, we have Theresa Giles from Syracuse, New York, and her story is all that and a bag of chips. And I know some of you missed it because you don't know how to be on time. So next week, try to be on time, and we're going to get her to start this thing all over, because I know she can say it again with no problem and help you all know how she came to be the author, educator, and entrepreneur she is. And so we're going to start this thing all over, because there are several people who just joined on the call. But before we do that, someone please tell me who 443-469-3453 is.
It's Tiffany.
Tiffany, what's your last name, sweetie?
Harrison.
Harrison. Nice to have you on the call. We are so grateful you are here. We understand that this is COVID, and we don't have time to be wasting. I'm very grateful you are here. So you are 469-3453?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It didn't. Tiffany, what was your last name again, sweetie?
Harrison.
I'm sorry. I tried. It didn't. There we go. I'm sorry. Welcome to Urban Academics. Now we need 443-742-5091. What is your name?
Michelle Sallin.
Spell the last name for me, Michelle.
Sure. It's S as in Sally, A-L-L-I-N.
I-N. Sallin. What was your first name? I'm sorry. It didn't take
Oh, Michelle. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Michelle. Yes, ma'am. Michelle. Mm-hmm.
S-A-L-I-M?
No.
Salim.
So Sallin. It's S as in Sally or Sam, A-L-L-I-N. So Sallin. Sallin is how you pronounce it.
L-L-I-N. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for joining the call. We appreciate you here. So, Theresa, I'm going to open back up to you, and I'm going to go on mute. And you just go ahead. Again, you need to tell the world, not just those of us on this call from wherever we might come from, the whole world. Right now, we are in COVID week number 7-8. We are 8 weeks into our children having no academics, no education. We're not sure what's going on, what school's starting when. If we can go back and think about what the village could have done back then and what we could be doing now, what would be the gap? What would be the help us understand what we need to be doing to make sure that we are not the ones who lose. Every dollar that's come in from Title I, from Century 21, has been earmarked for our children, for urban, inner city children. People have been intercepting that money, and our children can't read, write, and half of them can't count. So what do you have to say about that, Lady Giles?
Well, it's interesting that I get to try and answer this question tonight, because I just got a report today from my grandson's mother, which the son is my son is the father, and she, the mother, called me with crying because my grandson has not been doing all of his assignments. They had given him what you call a second chance. Here in Syracuse, New York, children have come home. Some schools have supplied children with laptops or tablets, and he's been fortunate enough to be one of those children. However, his mom is home because she's been home as a result. She's been at home since January, and so they've offered him an alternative school, because instead of sending him into the junior highs that he would have gone into, because he's behind on assignments and he hasn't shown the effort to prove that he can work in that large group. They want to they developed the alternative school. And this is in a rural area, but they developed an alternative school, and they will have classrooms with about 8 children maximum in each class, so that they can help him come up. And then for 8th grade, he'll go on to 8th grade. If the parents don't agree with the alternative school, then he would have to fail 6th grade. But like the mom said, and let's be real, you all. She said, and crying, and then she conferenced me into my son. She said, we failed our child. Of course, he's lax on his own as a kid, and a lot of kids are without the pushing of the parents. And she said, and we failed him. We've been home. Everybody been having fun, chilling with your mate, smoking weed, watching movies, watching TV, not letting the kids get on their laptop or their tablet to do homework, but not sitting at the table doing it with them, or being right there to make sure the assignments are done. Then children are staying up super late. They're on their electronics. They're on their phone. They're on their PlayStations. They're doing all this. And so what she decided to do is, and I had already told them this some time back, take all that away. And because I learned from someone who educated their children, who helped me to do mine years ago. At that time, and then she took all the TVs out the room. So me having raised 6 kids, I learned this from someone years ago. I've never had TVs in my children's rooms, and so that's what's happening. And I think what has happened is you can never, I know this, I probably don't fit in this conversation, I don't know, because you can't depend on a total system to educate your children. We have a responsibility to our children as parents, given to us by God. So we have to do our part. So, well, what if the parent don't know that much? What if the parent is not educated? Neither was Dr. Carson Carr, mom, educated. She had a 3rd grade education, but she had him to do book reports, and he didn't know until he was an adult or near adult age that his mother only had a 3rd grade education. So it is still the primary responsibility of us as parents to educate our children. She made him do a book report every day. She made him do extra homework. He did not know that his mother only had a 3rd grade education. And everyone knows him, Dr. Carson Carr. He worked in whatever hospital in Maryland. You all know, some of you do. And he's the first doctor to separate Siamese twins, and they both lived. And he has a phenomenal story in the book, Gifted Hands. And so we can't say just because the parents don't have an education that their children can fall through the cracks. And so we first and primary is our responsibility is to our children ourselves as parents. So I think if we can somehow get a message to parents, you have to be a part of this process. You have to be a part of that development. If there's never a school, what you're going to do? Even if it's virtual learning, what are you going to do? Parents still have to be a part of it, and so that's where I feel, and that's what I had to do with 6 children, and again, as I just explained in my story, I had to make them do book reports. I had them read the Word of God every morning. I had them to open up their understanding. I made them do book reports because I learned from those books that I read. I had one that was behind on read it. Before you go out to play, you got to read to the other young siblings 3 books a day. And that's what I did. We have to take some responsibility. You cannot come in this world and think a government is that enslaved us for hundreds of years is going to give 100% attention to the welfare of our children. It ain't going to happen, and it's not their responsibility. Yes, there's some money that's flowing around in America and that we are entitled to. Okay, that's one thing, but the primary responsibility to our children's education, it starts in the home.
And that's what the village is. So those of you who are on the phone, don't sit there listening. What does the village mean, and what can we do to make the village more accountable for what's going on right now? Hello?
I'm here.
Hello.
So what can we do to make the village do what it's supposed to do, even when we don't have money to pay the village? Because lots of times in the village, the people want to get paid. We don't have money to pay them, so what are we supposed to do?
Is there anybody on the line?
Yeah, I'm on the line.
I'm on the line. I think we might have lost. No, we're going to lose Theresa.
I'm on the line.
Yeah, so the questions are all pointing to you because you're on the hot seat.
Okay. So I'm.
Yeah, it's your seat, baby. All the rest of us are here to hear from you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, everybody. I thought different people just answered questions. I apologize.
No. You are the one to. Now there's dialogue, so everyone can contribute. Okay. But it's your table.
Okay, so now ask that question again. I'm sorry, because I was just looking for someone else to answer a question, so I didn't.
Well, we've had a couple, but I think the one I asked was, since you said that there's been some kind of lack around the village, and the village is how PMA started. Like, we can't function without every developmental level contributing to children. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I think your question was, what can we do to I think honestly, just looking at an assessment of how you have to educate the parents somehow, not a formal education, an informal. Its primary responsibility is yours. And somehow we have to reach these parents, because I've worked with children over 20 years, and we poured a lot of things into these children. I did the affirmations. I did the trips. I've done stuff to expose them. Our parents, in the history of me doing daycare for the 20 years, minus about 2 of them, I believed in this, that when the children came to us, our after-school program, let's make it so that parent, when she get off work, because 98% of them was single parents, well, let's make sure she could just go home and cook food. She could look at your homework. If she chooses to. We hope she do. But we're going to make sure that it's all done, and to relieve that stress off the mother. And that's what we did for those years. Make sure that homework is done, so that's something the mother didn't have to come home and do. But then I realized that somehow, even though that was good for some parents will still go home and look over it. Some parents are never going to look at the homework. However, we taking some responsibility that rightfully belongs to parents, and so somehow we have. And then so these are the same parents that's crying because I've been in this a long time, that because your child is in jail because we doing the pipeline to prison at a certain age. Your child gonna come through that pipeline. So now you're the parent that's crying, but you're the parent that didn't pour anything into these children. And so I think we have to somehow reach the parents to let them help them to understand their responsibility in every arena of their child's progress, academic, social, economics, in every arena of a child's life.
So do we do that with like needs assessment?
Say that again.
How do we get the parents more involved? Do we do a needs assessment per family, per parent to get them involved? Because some parents is going to be more, like you said, into the education more than others. So how do we get those others to buy in the education for their children?
I think sometimes we have to, unfortunately, I'm saying the word unfortunately because you shouldn't have to use tactics all the time to awaken the senses of parents so they can understand the need for their children to have a good education so that they can have a brighter future. So because sometimes we're dealing with uneducated parents, and some of them, not all, but some of them.
It's not always uneducation. It's being had to work.
I can't hear you.
I said sometimes it's not uneducation. It's some of them are working so hard. As I think as a village, you have to find the people in the village that have the ability to teach the children, lead the children, guide the children, and you kind of take on that job without pay. But then to see the kids turn in a different direction and see hope and a different way of life, that's the reward. That's the price that the kids give back to you.
Okay, so
you
didn't give me a chance to finish the question. So
I'm sorry.
Finish the answer. No, it's not a problem. I butt in all the time, so I can take some butts because I do it all the time. But what I was trying to say is, I said, unfortunately, we have to, and I said, rather there's the reason I was trying to explain. While some parents may have an interest, maybe because some uneducated people, but not all, don't have an interest in education because they're uneducated. So I said, so what we will have to do, the question was, what do you do to still be able to, how do we reach these parents? Sometimes you got to come up with creative ideas and creative ways to reach these parents to get them involved. Sometimes you got to use incentives you got to use some incentives to get these parents to be involved in the process. Even if the process is only get your children to a team of us that's going to educate, help your children with the homework. You know what I mean? Even if that's the objective, because they're going to get it. They're never going to do it at home because whatever's going on in the home, your family dynamic is not a part of the education process for whatever reason, because you're going to have that in life too. I've dealt with every form of family you can have. So then you got to do something to use an incentive to get that parent to bring that child out to a particular forum or out to a particular place, or get the child involved in a particular activity that will allow us to help that child further their education, because they're not going to get no other way. So you got to come up with some creative ideas, you know. Like, for example, say I wanted to take the children to the new Afro-American African American museum that the Obamas did. Well, I already knew that the parents was not going to sacrifice. Our parents would buy some Jordans before they spend money for their children to have fine dining, fine hotel, go to the museum, take the trip out of town. So so the likelihood of all the children having that experience, or equally all having that experience, that wasn't going to happen. So what I do is say, hey, this no charge to you as parents. We're going to do this for your children. Just make sure that they're here. Make sure that they have now some things I can get them to do. Make sure that they got decent clothes because we're going out of town. I want everybody to look good. Make sure your boys got haircuts. Make sure you put your girls' hair in braids or whatever you're going to put them in so that it can last through the 3 days that we're going to be in D.C. And make sure I don't want kids to look a certain way. You know, our parents will do that now. They're going to make sure their kids look good. And so then and we're going to pay for this whole trip, because my goal is to give them some exposure to some history to inspire them. But we had to pay the thousands just so that they can get that exposure for that whole trip. And so that's but to the parent is, I got 3 days off and I ain't got to worry about no children. So that was the motivation for them to, okay, I'll go get them some new sneakers. I'll make sure I get her hair done. I'll make sure he get a haircut, and I've got some clothes. You know, that helped them on that level. And they said, and I have 3 days off. You mean from Thursday to Sunday? I don't got to be worried about him, her, or the three of my kids or whatever. Yes. So then that was an incentive for them to prepare that child to go on that trip so we can give them the exposure. So we just got to come up with creative stuff.
So this is Kay Harvey. I wanted to jump in there. I'm so excited. Listen, what is your thought in regard to, like, incentives, having parents sign contracts? Do you use the contract? I know here in New Haven we have several schools that are cooperatives, and that the parents, you know, have to volunteer a certain amount of hours per month in any capacity. You know, it could be them, if they're lawyers, they could, you know, look over some paperwork that the school may need, or, you know, maybe the stay-at-home mom who, you know, can go on the trip. But having to do a certain amount, you know, holding parents accountable, because, you know, we keep talking about, you know, how do we do it? So my question again, Lady Giles, is have you used contracts with parents as a way of holding parents accountable?
No, but I haven't, because I always had enough staff. And so one thing about the staff that I had at the daycare, I had enough coverage and they wanted the trip too, and the staff was getting some exposure that they probably didn't have before also. So I had enough staff, and I personally always went too. I went to every trip. And so but what I'm taking from this roundtable, because I started my new center in September, I'm going to have contracts, and I'm going to have parents more accountable, and I'm going to get them involved on that level. What you're saying, I'm taking notes tonight too, and so I think that is something that I've had a couple parents, but they've always been my children or my grandkids' mother, but we never extended it out to the rest of them because everybody had jobs or you know, I think I'm in tier 2 or whatever of our city. So the people that's in our city, the people that I care for, I haven't cared for parents of lawyers or judges or parents that were. As I'm just going down the line, how many of my parents? I did. I had parents that were nurses. The highest level has been some nurses. I haven't had parents. I had a lot of nurses. I had a lot of their children, and they were probably the most educated ones that I've had. but I haven't had lawyer children as I'm looking back over the years, besides my own daughter. And then I haven't had, I have had teachers, but that is something I'm definitely going to do. And then I deal with people that got 3, 4, 5 kids, and so when we only take 2 on a trip, they still home with their other ones. And so, but I'm gonna implement that, because that's less I probably got to spend out on trying to get all this extra staff, available, and get some other ones to cover them in our absence. So,
and I do have to interject this one more thing. In regard to parents, like career levels or education levels, having a contract, it doesn't matter, because you could be a janitor but yet be an excellent musician and can come in and play the guitar in the classroom with the children. So I hope that we keep the doors open for every parent that applies to your school, and whatever gifts and talent that they may have. It may not, it may not come in the form of a PhD, poor, helpless, and desperate. So that I did have to just say that as well. I understand. Yes, absolutely.
I totally agree. And listen, I have had people to come in to teach the kids music. I've had a whole music room, and I've had people to come in, but they were never the parents. I've had musicians of someone's son that I know that he's gifted in music. I've had a person that's gifted in song that I knew. I might have known him from the street. I might have known him from another place that I frequent before, and I just knew about their gifts. So I've had different people with different gifts and talents come in to work with the children. It just was never the parents. Mm-hmm. It just was never the parents. So and these people weren't educated. They were just gifted. They didn't have a formal education or anything like that. So I believe that God has imbued every human born under the sun with gifts and talents, and so you don't. It has nothing to do with your education. It is something, a calling on your life, and so I believe in exposing those gifts and talents at all costs, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter their education level. So I'm not the type of person that they say, oh well, the only way I'm going to have you what you have, and we're going to expose it to the children is if you're educated. I think the question was when you have people like lawyers and they can come and volunteer and do certain things to help educate our children in a particular area. So I was addressing the question based on what was asked of me, and in that question you said lawyers who could help, and I wish I had at one time parents that, and I never did it, so I always freed the parents up and let everybody else, or found other people in the community to come in and do this and pay them for that particular service. But I'm, like I said on the roundtable, that is something I'm taking notes on tonight, and I'm going to incorporate that into this new center I opened in September, for sure.
Well, I'll say this: most people who start early learning programs are just in it for early learning, because most people who have children between preschool and kindergarten need daycare or early learning care or babysitters or whatever we want to call them until they get ready for school, where most people say, oh, they exhale because now it's free. Okay, so in my case, my children went to a private school, and there is not a superintendent, but one of the principals in New Haven that I worked with almost every day always challenged me on that. And I'm going to get him on this roundtable because we need to have this conversation about private school, charter school, and public school. And he would always say, because I use his building for my creative work, but my children didn't go to public school. So he always challenged me. Every time he saw me, he never charged me for his building. He never gave me an invoice for using his stage. I've had all kind of events and programs there and open forums. He opened his door every day. But his biggest gripe with me has always been, why did you put your kids in that quote-unquote white people's school? This has been our gripe. I'm going to get him on this call. He hasn't been here yet, but I'm going to get him. But he's always challenged me in my face. Why your kids go to that school way out there? And I didn't have an answer for him. I really did not. I'm going to tell you the truth because we're on this call, and this is raw because everybody won't get the calls that we have raw. We're going to edit these, but you who are on this call tonight will get a copy of whatever's raw, so we could be honest. And I can't tell him. I couldn't tell him why my children went to private school. What I could say was, when I was in the elevator one day talking to my son, this old lady said, "Ooh, your son needs to be at Whitewood School." And I said, "Well, what's Whitewood School?" And she told me. Within a week, I was at Whitewood School. I'm in my early 20s. I don't know much. My child is not in school at all yet. We tried to get that brother in Whitewood School at age 3. They had never taken a child at age 3. So they made me wait till age 4. For his age 4, the whole year was paid for based on his interview. So what I'm going to say is we need to tell young black mothers, young black, brown, and poor mothers that they need to push their children's gifts forward. Even though I didn't push my son's gift, I helped him explore them because I was willing to talk to him. I was willing to have a relationship with a baby. The only thing I had was that baby, I'm telling you. So it didn't matter to me who else was around. I gave 100% of me to that baby. And because of that, all the gifts that God has came through that baby. And that's all we have to do is push the young parents back to their children, away from anything that would hinder them. And so I don't know who's on the phone. Let me go back to my computer because I don't know who's on this call. But whoever is on this call, whoever stumbles on this call, whoever lands on this call, if you don't hear anything else, please pay attention to your children. I know without a shadow of a doubt, my baby Mo is hand-to-eye contact. I know that's either football. It's not basketball. It's either football or it's the get to. Oh God, I can see all his gifts. It is my job to push him. Myri, I involve her in everything I can find art, free or paid. I don't have a problem paying. I have no problem investing in my children. And I did that from welfare. So that doesn't make me different from anybody, but it makes me different from anybody. I didn't have no money, yet somehow I was paying for education that we're supposed to get for free. And yet free education that the government got trillions of dollars in does not equate. Somebody on this phone, please help me figure out why.
Well, I just think the system wasn't set up for us.
True. That is true. Did anyone else hear that? He said the system was not set up for us.
That's the bottom line.
Well, okay, since it's me and UK, we can go iron to iron. So if that's the case, then how is it that on welfare with no money, no hope for nothing, when you're on welfare, right? That's what they say, right? They say when you're on welfare, you're at the bottom. That's rock bottom. You can't get no lower than that. So on welfare, I am working 2 days a week at that school. I'm in my early. I'm not 25 years old. Hello? I'm not. I'm working 2 days a week at that school. The first computer I ever put my fingers to was at that school. First time I ever made a flyer for anything was at that school. First time I ever went to a wine tasting was at that school. First, Mark and Monet were skiing in kindergarten because I was in an elevator one day. How can we help our people get to the elevators? That's all I'm talking about. It's not that bad. It's not that hard. I'm just make sure that our children have opportunities, and you can only get it by going out in the world. They're trying to stop us from going to the elevator. If I couldn't have got to the elevator, Mark and Monet would never have found Whitewood School. We're not careful. The elevators are closed. The doors are closed. If you didn't make your connections by now, you'll never make them. So if that's true, if we are on this call, let me find out how many people on this call. Hold on. I know how many started because I sent the collection to Kay. I sent a snapshot to say who was on the call. There were several people on this call when we started. However many remain, I know you must care something about children. Not about the boat, because what did that do us? Since when? We don't even know what the boat is. Somebody help me.
I think so much. If the elevator closes, so be it. We are just as smart. We are just as intelligent. Somebody have paved the way. Somebody have paved the way that the generation that we are in, us, we can open up our own schools and educate our own children and expose them to skiing and computers, and it's we're still waiting on someone to open up a school for us. Opening up a school is almost one of the easiest things you can do, and there's not many barriers involved with opening up a school. You can open up schools all over America. And I think that we as black people are waiting on we have to stop waiting on someone else to open up a school that's conducive to how we want our children to be taught. Open up our own schools. Black people can open up schools. There are black schools. There are black own schools. You might be a private school. You might end up being a Montessori school. It doesn't matter. You can open up a school. Like me, my profession is daycare. But I'm this time. Well, I'm not doing infants. I'm starting at the pre-K level up. However, because and the reason but in my backyard, I have a very close friend that works at a youth center. She's a grant writer on top of the executive director, and it changes the dynamic. She writes the grants. She creates the programs for it. And so we can do this as a people. We're waiting for somebody to do something for us. Then we're ostracizing them for not doing it for us, and that's not even their responsibility. They don't have to open up schools to educate our children if they don't want to. And they don't have to make an excuse for not doing it because they got PhDs, they have master's degrees, but so do we. And we can do it. And we have access to the same funding. These are 501c3 funding. My friend, she just wrote a grant for she hasn't been there a year. I just sat with her to 3:30 in the morning. She said, well, I came in and they was about to close and fold and everything. They was only operating at a budget of $300,000. She said, and just this 1 year I wrote grants for $500,000 and I'm still writing. So now we're at $800,000 a year and it's growing. And this is just a youth program. We can do this. Why are we waiting and blaming somebody else when God's going to say, you didn't have to wait to go to their public schools. You didn't have to wait to go to their private schools. You didn't like their schools. I gave you the same equal opportunity to get an education in America. People died for us to get an education
so that we can open up our own schools. Before the 60s, there were one room classrooms for black, and those people came out, George Washington Carver and those guys that came up through the worst of the trenches. They have excelled so much more. We have to go back to let's do this for ourselves without
the village
at someone else.
The village. When everybody matters.
Your master's degree, your PhD, your bachelor's, your associate, whatever you got, and you got to go do something to educate our children. Open up a school, open up a center, open up a whatever, and it's one person at a time, one school at a time, and we can make a difference. One community at a time, and we can do it. I'm about to do it again.
Right.
So,
and there are people already doing it all over the world.
There's
so
many people doing it all over the world.
Right. There's and then even with all the people doing it, the harvest is plenty, the laborers are few. So with all the people, interested in running programs and all of that, and we can get into what that means another time. But there's so many people with ideas and things like that. So we know that in every city of every state across the world.
I think we have to quit talking and do it.
Do it.
You got to launch. You got to jump. You got to jump off the diving board. We have stood on the diving board too long. You have to jump. You have to launch. You have to. And it's a lot of conversations, but more of us need to launch. You have to jump.
Right.
You have to jump. You cannot stay on the sideline saying, yeah, the water looks good, it looks blue, and I like it. And no, jump.
Right.
So,
but don't jump just to jump. Jump knowing what you're jumping for.
Do your homework. Do your homework before you jump. You got to do your homework.
Like you want to know you're jumping for K through 12 or K through 5 or K through nothing.
Like Booker T.
Parents.
Said, drop your buckets where you are. What do you know? How much if you only have the capacity to work with 4 through 7-year-olds, then that's what you do. If you
wherever you show your hands. Right.
That's what you do. Drop your buckets where you are. You like to specialize in children, and you just want to teach dance. Drop your buckets where you are. Educate them. You can educate them in any forum that you put your hand to do. Use that platform to educate our children. Bottom line, and we will make a difference all over the world. We just have to launch. You have to jump and stop standing on the sidelines. And most successful businesses start with almost nothing. In 2017, I made over $1 million in 17. I started with nothing. I started with nothing. Like literally nothing. But an ideal and a dime. But I stayed with it. And so when we closed in 18, and now it's time for me to start back up, it doesn't even freak me out because I know what it is to start from nothing. How many times have I started from nothing? Which one of the businesses did I start from nothing? All of them. And then I just learned as I learned at a certain level and I grew to another level. And then I learned at that level and I grew to another level. And so that's what you do. Whatever you know, do what you know and grow. And then do what you know at that level and then grow some more. But always get a business that you can bring other people in that see your vision, support your vision, want to be a part of the vision, and pay them. Them people have to eat. They have families.
That's why we ain't doing it free anymore. I said that's why we don't do it free anymore. So if you're on this call, we're also trying to understand how to fund what we do as people for Black, brown, and poor kids. So the day of it being free and doing it for free is good, and we've all done that. Everything or everyone has already paid dues. So we are really trying to make sure that we go after who can fund, so we don't waste our time at the bottom anymore. So can you speak to how you get the money from up top is what I know. But if you have any, like, strategies or backdoor ways, I'm bold enough to go, like, people go stand in line to vote. Me, instead, I go on Google and figure out who they voted for, and then I go to their door. And that's how I found out I had a state representative 4 doors down from me. You speak to that.
Well, I've never done anything like that. I have this pet peeve about doing something like that, but I took my
Wait, like what?
I'm not knocking on any of their doors for nothing.
A representative that you voted for?
I don't do it. I'm not saying that.
No, I'm just saying, is that wrong?
No. You didn't hear me. I said I don't do it.
But why?
I don't do it. To me,
you're public figures. You voted for them. They don't have private nothing. They don't.
I look at things through a different window. If God give me vision, I expect Him to give me the provision. Now, if He direct me in a way that once I start the locomotive to going, the funding always seems to appear from whichever pocket that's going to be best suited. But I'm not about to bow and bend and beg to get it. I don't do it.
No, that's not what I'm saying, because you don't need funding. If you have a proof of concept, you can charge. So you don't have to go nonprofit.
I just have a thing about knocking on a representative door like, who are you? You sit on the toilet like I do, and I'm not coming to ask you for a handout, because if you tell me no, then it says to me that you have the power to determine my future and my fate. I don't operate on that level. I'm totally
that's
different.
That's not my question. Not my question. Hold up. That's not my question. I'm trying to figure out why people even get in the line to vote. I'm talking about voting, because the purpose for voting is so that poor people can get resources. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm not necessarily what y'all think I am, but I'm an entrepreneur, so I understand certain things about people who pay rent and pay salaries, and we get our money last, and then nonprofits get grants that they don't have to pay back, and so those are tricky things. So can you speak to, now you're an entrepreneur, so a school, running Hope Academy is totally different from running a for-profit, like in your restaurant or your social club.
I only work for profit. I never ran a nonprofit organization, so I understand the difference in a for-profit and a non-for-profit. The for-profit is, the non-profit is you going to ask for money to fund your ideal, your dream, your vision, your business, whatever it is. I never operated a non-for-profit. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I just never operated one. I just did not operate one. I've always operated for-profit, even daycare. That's for-profit. Mine has always been for-profit, every business I've ever had. So that's what I know, and that's most comfortable for me. Everything is not for everyone, but that is most comfortable for me. I have a thing about dictatorship, and that's probably because of my personality type. So I know that when you get certain grants, then you are giving them, whoever gives you that money, they have a legal right to dictate certain things when it comes to your business. I, on the other hand, have a problem with dictatorship, but so it doesn't really work for my personality type. But there's nothing wrong with them. and I've seen it do. People do extremely well in nonprofit organizations, thousands of them, and they do well in life. But for me, the type of person I am, I have a problem with it. So that's probably why I was never called into that area to do business, or never was attracted to go in that area to do business. I know other people that do, and they do extremely well. It's just it probably wouldn't work for me. I've had some offers in the daycare to share some space with a nonprofit organization, but just in the meeting that we had, I realized that it wasn't for me and that I was not going to give them that type of authority in my business. So that's just my personality type. And so it works for some, it just doesn't work for me.
But you see it as a personality type. I see it as good business. Like, you should know what your boundaries are in your business. And as an entrepreneur, you knowing that's good stuff. That's good stuff. That's good stuff that we should all know.
Out two different windows. You can't tell me that I got to see out your lenses, because I don't.
But not that. That's not. But it's your business. It's your business. So you should know what you want to do. Is all I'm saying. Like, so
I
that's true for all of us.
If it's my business, then you don't dictate. That's my philosophy.
But that's nothing to do with nonprofit. That has to do with personality, like you were talking about. And personality is
personality type. But that's neither here nor there right now.
Right. It is. I can't see the computer. I wanted to see who was on the line, but I'm so glad that we're here, and we are talking about the village. And I know that I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I thought I heard Dre.
I thought I heard someone trying to say something.
Me too. I thought it was Dre. It was a familiar in my ear, but it was like echoey. And I know these headphones are crazy. Like, people have different headphones. If 2 or 3 people are on speaker, that's even worse if you're not on mute. You know what I mean? So it's like we can't hear. But the village, I think, that's why I like PMOSH. The model, everything about youth development is peer-driven. So everything is on the right, field. Like, I don't see certified teachers as tutors. Why would I use a certified teacher to tutor a third grader? First of all, K through 10, 11, K through 10, here's wah, 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 wah. I swear to God. So why would that's why the kids are not functioning in mainstream school. Even Charlie Brown knew they couldn't hear nothing from old people. That's why if you look at Charlie Brown and you look at Charlie Brown good, when the kids are in a classroom or near adults, the adults sound like this. They don't hear us. So PMOSH, from the very beginning, people involved in motivating our students higher from the very beginning was peer-driven. Why? Because I come from a school of positive youth development and best practices for youth development. So, Kay, could you just jump in right there and tell everyone what positive youth development is, and then we can tie that into what's going on in New York and Syracuse, what's going on in New York and Brooklyn, what's going on in Boston, where Dre is, what's going on in Phoenix, where Kay is, what's going on in Charleston, where Denise is, what's going on in New Haven and Atlanta, where you are, and what's going on right here in Charlotte, where I am, and what's going on in Syracuse, New York, where Theresa Giles is. And yes, we can all make a difference.
And that is positive youth development. where we all have a role, where young people are given opportunities to be able to explore and develop their gifts and their talents, and being in an environment where they are respected, their thoughts, their ideas, their dreams are respected. And so when you give young people the opportunity to be with adults who understand that positive means yes, that positive means I can, positive means I am. And so when you talk about youth, you're talking about young people from birth to 24. When we talk about development, it is the opportunity to look at the spiritual, mental, physical, what's the other one? What is it? Did I get it all? Physical, mental, spiritual.
Holistic.
Okay. and when the young people understand, or I'm sorry, when the adults understand that the young people need them to just be there and listen to them, respect them, and then make it happen with them. Make whatever the discussion, the dream, make it happen with them. And so positive youth development is that, and it's happening here in New Haven. I'm trying to think. I know we still have an organization called Citywide Youth Coalition. We're about to expound upon that because, again, I always say, if you don't write your story, somebody else will. And we are not going to allow that to happen here in New Haven. We want to make sure that the history of this particular organization that was started by youth organizations, making sure that people, the people in the community are getting access to the resources, whether that was free lunch, free breakfast, and the young people were getting jobs. That's not happening. So that story is being lost, and so we're rounding up some of the young people who are now maybe in their 30s and reaching back to them, and so that they could reach to the young people that are in their 20s and teens here in New Haven, and be able to have a forum where these young people can, know and understand how positive youth development in New Haven looked like in the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, and what it looks like now. And so that's what's happening here in New Haven. In regard to Atlanta, there's a group of young women who are doing some entrepreneurial things with the teas, and it's just wonderful to see them supporting each other. When I say teas, I'm drinking tea, hot or cold tea. And so they're holding, so this group of young women, in their late 20s, early 30s, are meeting on a regular basis, and those of us who have access to them are listening and learning from them as well. And so that's happening in Atlanta with positive youth development. Signing out, Kay Harvey.
Well, one thing we know, we're in COVID-19, and our children have been out of school now for 8 weeks straight, which is longer than any holiday or spring or winter or summer break, and they're headed for 2 more of those before school starts again. So can we at least address some of how we're feeling about that? Any losses or gains? You think it's good to relax? You think our kids can stand the downtime? We had to take a break. What do you think about it, academically speaking?
Well, I think that you have to keep the lubrication going in a child's brain. We have to continue, but because we don't have the access to children like we did prior to COVID-19, then again, the sole responsibility is the primary is going to be on the parents. Of course, there's so much money going down the pipeline through education right now, even with the children being home, because you're supposed to have so much involvement from teachers and students that are at home here in New York, in Syracuse, that supposedly the kids are still vibrant and escalating academically. But again, like I just told the story about a grandchild of mine, that it was highly recommended today from an administrator that they hold him back and allow him to go on to 7th grade, or the other alternative was an alternative school, because of the slack that has taken place since he's been home. But the mom, being mature, said they failed their child. Because ultimately, if the school is giving out the assignments, and they are, and I believe they've been doing that all across the country, it is for the parents to make sure that those their children are doing the assignment.
No, again, the law now what you're saying is getting ready to be true or already true by now.
Well, here.
But hold up, before COVID-19, the federal government was responsible for educating our children, those that are disabled, those with diagnoses of anything educational, like retardation, like what are the other ones? Asperger's, like autism. All those were the responsibility of the government. And now, I guarantee you, with all the law changes and the signature of, what do they call those? Authoritative, what do they call them? Oh, somebody tell me what it is. I can't think. But they have put into law quite a few things. And if, in fact, they're no longer in charge of educating our kids, because remember, the line item for education in this country is just education. There's $1 trillion in the budget, the D.C. budget, the federal budget, education. It doesn't say educating. It says education. So that budget of 1,000 trillion, 2 trillion, however much they want to print, that's just a number that's split amongst states. Well, so who's doing the educating? That's us. Whoever did like a charter school or whatever, then you get the pennies. Then we try to do programs. We running programs forever. There's been trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars every year. That's what they're saying. Basically, what they're saying is, like it or not, parents are now ready or not responsible for educating their own children, and we're acting like we don't understand what that ramification means. For our parents, some of them don't even get the mail. Well, how are they going to do that like that? Help us figure out what to do to help. Like, we know it's over. We know it's a new world. We know it's a new world order. Education is never going back to normal ever. Why would it? It don't make no sense. So, but, okay, we get that. So now that we get that, we're beyond that. We should know that. If you're on this call and you don't know that, you scare me. So call me tomorrow. It's never going back to regular. We get it. So somebody on this call, please help me get to some kind of, like, do we go to each state? So right now we have represented on this call Atlanta, Georgia, Boston, Massachusetts, Charleston, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, New Haven, Connecticut, Phoenix, Arizona, and there's some 443. So I'm guessing that's Maryland. There's some more Connecticut. Yeah, I'm saying. So if you somewhere that I didn't mention, please shout yourself out, please.
So we're Baltimore, Maryland. And
Baltimore, Maryland. See that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Please speak to us, please.
So here's what I can say. So this is my first year teaching. So I switched from being a research scientist to go teach middle school science, because in Baltimore City, when you're in 7th grade, that dictates what high school you can get into, what public high school you can get into, because you have to apply to public high schools in Baltimore City, which I know is similar in New York City and other cities in other big urban environments in the States. But in 7th grade is when that decision is made based on how well you do in 7th grade. And we know how mature children are in 7th grade. And so I switched out of my career as a research scientist to do something more locally in the city, to become a teacher, a middle school teacher. And so that's what I've done for this first year. What I have found as a complete outsider to the system, and so believe me, this is not an expert opinion, this is just a very naive opinion, but what I have really, really seen is there's just there's not a lot of accountability for the students anymore. We've really taken that away and have allowed children to not invest themselves in their education. So I'm at middle school. So, in a middle school, I'm a believer that at that age they have to start making an investment too. It's not all just what's happening at home. They have to start making that investment and want that themselves. I think the other thing, and I agree with everything that's been said, but I think another big thing is that we really don't have community. As we need to be better community builders in order for the village to come back and to help our students and children to be successful, because we have all become so individualized in our own units and all. And yes, we have community within it, but when it comes down to decisions and trying to keep children moving forward and going forward, I think there's not as much community there to help support and give children those supports. A lot of the students that I have are behind. I mean, that's the bottom line. They're behind, and in all honesty, we're going to be passing them on to the next grade this year with all that's happened, and so it's just a vicious cycle that they just keep staying behind because we're trying to meet numbers and tests that have been set up so that we have data and data points that we can draw on. And it may be a misuse of the data by having a certain number for us to reach instead of having a way of just showing growth. Because I have seen growth in my students, but they didn't reach a top number. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I'm bringing up a whole other thing. So I think the biggest problem that we truly have, and that's culturally overall. So this whole being pushed back on the parents, I think is, though, yes, they're now seeing it in their face. That's the reality, and that's culturally how I have viewed education for a very long while. And in the systems that we have been running and the way we run it in the United States is that it does get pushed back on the parent. And the example you gave was wonderful about your children, in that you saw an opportunity, and you're somebody who finds opportunity. You saw an opportunity in front of you, and you put your children in a private school. And so they've got those exposures, and they got all of that because you saw that need was there, and you're there with them, and you're pushing their education along. And unfortunately, for reasons that I know, people are working and they have all other things, they have to feed their children. I get that. But education isn't the top thing. And people aren't saying in their households, not every household says, if you get an education, you can do more because you will have the knowledge and power to do more. Yeah, that's not a message that's being there. Another message that's not being said, and just based on behaviors that I have seen in my own classroom, is children don't own their own mistakes, and we don't allow them to fail. So I think at the beginning of the conversation, I apologize, I forget our the guest speaker tonight who was speaking, but I think that she brought up a really good point, and that she has said multiple times, that she has dug out, she's had to rebuild and go again. And I think that culturally, we just look at failure as such a negative thing, and in the reality, we all need it. That's how you're successful at all in life, and most failure always leads to something better. If you're, working and all of that, of course, we can all argue that. But so I think that's another thing that we've really lost. And I will hand the floor back.
Oh,
Thank you for that.
I think you that was a lot that you a great deposit you just made into all of us, especially you being new in the education system and then had all that observation and you saw things from so many different angles. But I think what you're saying, which is what Trina is after, is back to the village. We have to have more community involvement when it comes to the success of our children. Again, she just said we need some accountability when it comes to the children. They have to be accountable too. You have to have some interest in your education. As much as I'm saying the parents have to take some responsibility, and they do, but that child has to take some too. And that was the argument that my grandchildren mother conferenced me in without my son knowing I was on the line, and I didn't even know she was conferencing me, and I just was silent because she conferenced me into an ongoing conversation, a conversation that was ongoing at the time. So, but my son didn't want his son, which was the subject, he's a sixth grader, and she's talking about seventh graders, and they will push you on, but like that same administrator told my grandson's mother, if we let him go on and he doesn't learn certain skill sets right now, he's going to flunk around 11th grade, and most of the time they will drop out at that point. So they developed this because our communities don't have some type of extended care for children in the 7th grade, and that's where most of them fall off at. And she just said most of her kids are failing. So it's a confirmation that at that grade, children, what I think they start developing, you go from a kid and you're transitioning into some form of adolescence as you continue to grow. And that's where I stopped. You meet somebody, you're attracted at a young age and just go off into flurry land, and that can last throughout high school. And here I am, 16, pregnant by the same person I met in my 7th grade homeroom. And so, and then when I get this grand opportunity to work at Georgetown University, guess what? Even though I graduated from high school, I was reading at an 8th grade level. So somewhere from the time I met him in 7th grade to I got pregnant at 16, and even though I doubled up and came out, somehow my reading level stopped at the same time. And so, like she said, and like the administrator said, you lose them around that 7th grade, that the early junior high school grades. And again, like Trina said, what this young lady said, we got to have more community. So we have to develop some things in our community to target. Like here in Syracuse, we have the 100 Black Men Association, which is really doing well with our children here, and it's new in our community, but they're on point. I have some other grandsons that are involved in it wholeheartedly, and they do extremely well. And then the Junior Frontiers, you get to they come there, they ask questions, you answer them, and you get paid so much for every question that you answer, which is an incentive for children. And that's, they're reaching probably the 7th through 11th graders, 7th through 12. And so, again, we have to, and I'm glad for this forum. I'm glad for this round table because I'm about to open up. And she just said, I close and open up again, and close and open up again, but each round go higher, and you learn and you grow, and you do something bigger and better. So the things that I am hearing tonight, I am going to implement. I am taking notes, and I am going to implement these things in my new program wholeheartedly. And, you know, at a certain point, like I'm 57, I feel like this is the last lap, and you want to leave a legacy, and you want to make it matter that you lived. And it's not about how many shoes we have, how many wigs we have, how many places we've gone, which we do get to do those things, how many cars, what kind of car, how many cars we driving, but what do we leave for the next generation? Because if you don't pour into them, then they ain't going to be able to support you at the elderly level because they don't know anything. And then what is that generation going to pour into the generation that comes after them? So we have a responsibility by God, I believe, to leave something for the next generation. For those that read the scripture, it says, such and such knew God, but then he had a son that knew not God, and it destroyed a particular kingdom. And so it'll mess up a whole generation if we don't pour into the generation that's under us, who's supposed we're supposed to pass the baton. But if you're not passing anything, what are we doing? Why are we here? Did it ever matter that we live if we don't have anything to pass on to the next generation? And the greatest one among us is those that's going to serve humanity. And that's what we're doing, and it's serving humanity when we can pass something on to the next generation. I realize a lot of ideologies, a lot of conversations. It has absolutely nothing to do with passing something on to the next generation. So we have to, assess ourselves and say, well, what is this that I'm doing that's going to make a difference in the next generation? See, because we're sitting on a bus of a seat of our whatever choice of a seat that we want to sit in because somebody wanted to pass something on to the next generation. We can vote because somebody wanted to pass something on to the next generation. We're free from slavery because somebody wanted to pass something on to the next generation. We have education opportunities like never before because somebody wanted to pass something on to the next generation, and they were willing to die to themselves or even die, period, so that we will have opportunities. But what are we doing as a generation of people to pass something on to the next generation? We have to be conscious of this and make every effort daily to do something in terms of developing ourselves in order that we may pass things on to them. And if we don't do that, then our living is in vain, because that's what living is all about, just transitioning from glory to glory, one generation to the next. We're living off the backs. We stand on the shoulders of people who had not hardly the resources that we have, and they have left us so many great things in the earth to live by and to live out and to live on for the rest of our lives. George Washington Carver, come on, he was able to, Booker T. Rochester, two people, they offered George Washington Carver jobs other places. Booker T. wrote him a letter and said, I know that with your education level that you can work in the finest of places, but I'm asking you to come down here to Tuskegee, where some Negro students need to learn some things about agriculture. And if I can't pay you like everybody else, but I have a sect of Negro people that need to learn. If you can come down here for that cause. And so he did that. And when he died, he didn't even hardly cash any of those checks because he knew his purpose, and he knew that he was here to pour into the next generation. It wasn't about that me, myself, and I, and we have to get out of that. And while we're still living, if we're in it, this is the time to change your trajectory. in order that it mattered that we ever lived. And that's what I want to do. That's I said I'm 57. I'm on the last lap on the track, and I want it to matter that I live, and I want to pass a legacy on not only to my children, not only to my grandchildren, whom I pour into wholeheartedly, but also for my community, for children in our community. I do affirmations, and I tell them I am somebody. I am this. I have 5-year-olds and 3-year-olds, and I have a 3-year-old that get on her tablet. The mom, I didn't invite any of this. The mom and dad bought the brother and her tablet, and so I noticed that she's a colored girl, of course, because I'm black, and she looks at a lot of white. Your makeup, do your dances, your ballet, your gymnastics, and so I always try to tell her mom, let her look at either black and white or black only, because you're shaping her identity. So now I have told her so much about that. I don't want them to be anti-white, but I want them to understand their identity. So they have to see that. They have to see black children and black people that are doing things so that they won't fail that test. I think most of y'all on the line from listening to y'all conversation probably know about that test that they give children, that social, psychological, some type of test where it's a black child and a white child. They look identical, but they just have different skin color. And they say they do it with black children. And black kids always pick the white person who's the prettiest, who's the most intelligent, and always touch that white face. Why? Because subliminally, that's what they're looking at on TV. That's what they're looking at through different forms. So I want them to know that you're just as intelligent as the next person. I would say your skin color. So I do the test with my grandkids because me, Miss Afro-Central Black, my kids failed the test when they was little. I could not believe it. I was in a master's class. I said, "Oh, my kids will pass it when I show them." My kids failed the test. So now I do it with my grandkids. So my little 3-year-old kid said, "Grandma, there's black girls and white girls on this picture." Because that's what I want to look at.
Answer me this real quick. Just because we're in the midst of racism in 2020, and when I never experienced racism my whole life till I was in college. So I never experienced it. I've been around white people, black people, Puerto Rican people, but I was raised up north. Now I understand down here that's not true. There weren't very many Mexicans or Puerto Ricans, and some of the white people were really segregated and all of that. So I grew up where everybody was just a mesh. You know what I mean? So coming here was different every year. But I guess my question is, with kids that are biracial, do you have the conversation with them, point blank, that no matter what you look like, a police officer sees you as black unless they really look white? And if they look mixed in any way, do you or do you not have that conversation? Do you think it's worth it to have the conversation that we're all talking about as being black and driving and pulled over by a cop or whatever people do with us and police officers? Do you have that conversation?
Well, it's something you asked. I've never had that conversation. I just tell everybody how smart they is, that they're special and they're made in God. I have them do these affirmations. So no matter no matter how somebody look at them, I want them to it's how you look at yourself to determine who you are and your place in history. So I don't so much feed them into the mind of somebody else, but I tell them who they are in the sight of God, and I feed it to them. I feed it to them. I tell them they're special, they're somebody. I have them do those affirmations constantly, so that whether they're facing a judge, a police officer, a teacher, a mother or uncle that mistreats them, whether that person black or white, because all of our mistreatment doesn't come from white police officers. Most of our abuse comes from within our own families. We do see it in our communities, and I see it wholeheartedly. But we see a whole lot in our families and in our homes. So you want that child, you want to get that child to know who they are, because when you got a mother that might call you stupid, or uncle, or a brother that calls you stupid, or a sister, a brother that's bullying you, or uncle, or cousin. So how we fighting? We're teaching them about what could happen when you start driving in a police officer. But what about now at their age? How do you deal with that? Because those are the kids that doesn't get off ground zero, that's getting bullied and beat up and abused at home at this level right here. So before you ever get out in the street, how do you deal with it within your own family dynamic? And so I try to build their self-esteem and their self-worth. Right now, I'll deal with my 2-year-old grandson. I deal with my 2-3-year. I got 2 of everything except the 2-year-old, 2 3-year-olds, 2 5-year-olds, 2 7-year-olds, 2 11-year-olds. So I pour into them. I tell them who they are, because I see the other stuff that in the community, in the family, that can destroy their little egos. Like, it took me a long time to get self-esteem, a long time. I know how pivotal it is to pour into children from the time they come into this world. I tell them how special they are, regardless of their skin color. And so the reason I do the thing with the black and white, because I don't want to grow up with low self-esteem, because you see on TV most things subliminally to make you feel like the white people are the only successful. They're more intelligent than you are. They're smarter. They have better opportunities than you are. When I don't believe that, because of things that have happened in my life, I think that with the help of God, we have equal opportunity alongside others. And I mentioned that in my book. Yeah. But I haven't closed my eyes to police brutality or racism, but I think it begins with what's on the inside of you. What's on the inside, that's going to determine how you handle the things on the outside. We got to deal with the inner man first and foremost, because we can have a projection about the things that on the outside, but what about what's on the inside? Because most time we are our worst enemies, and so I try to deal with the inner man first. And if I could have lived my life over again, I would have reconstructed my life. I'm reconstructing my life at this age. Now I'm dealing with the inner man. I could have dealt with that a long time ago, and I would have been better off and further along, even though I have no regrets in most areas of my life. But there are some that I dealt with some inner issues. I would have made certain decisions that have taken me until this point in my life to overcome them. You know what I mean? So I go straight for the inner man with kids right now. Hello.
Well, one thing is for sure, that there's nothing we can do with children that without adults, their parents, their guardians, the people who care about them, and there's nothing we can do with adults without children. Because if an adult has a child in their house, they have no choice but to follow that child or lose them. If they don't follow that child to the school, to the doctor, to make sure they eat at least twice a day, they'll lose the child. And my fear, and I don't even have fear, but my hope, I'll say, is that our parents will not see the COVID-19 crisis or whatever it is as an escape for being a parent, and that they will stand up, that we will stand up, that we will all stand up and take responsibility for whatever children we see, wherever we see them, whenever we see them in need of anything. So whatever that is, if you see a child with a coat that's torn in the winter, if you got $30, go buy a coat. If you see a child with holes in their sneakers this summer, and you know it's summertime, it's the 4th of July. If you got $20, I guarantee you can find a pair of sneakers. They'll come with you. I'm telling you. I work with them every day. I'm on the front line every day. I never hid from COVID-19. I'm working 2 contracts with the state of North Carolina and Century 21 Learning Centers, which is federal. So I'm with children and adults. Both populations are developmental disability. Some of them have mental health diagnoses, many of whom are on medication, but I'm right there with them. I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I know if we keep talking about the question, we can come up with answers together. So I'm really, really happy that you're here, and I hope you stay. Don't run away. These are hard conversations. And it took us an hour almost to get there, but I promise we got there. We got there. There is some meat in what you will find here, and if you made it to the end of this call, I'll know it when I think we crashed something, so I don't know how many are there, but I'll find out when I get on the line. And whoever made it to the end, you get the raw footage. You do with it what you will. My recommendation is if you do a blog, you break it up. You break it up into little bite-sized portions, and you give it to people at will. You schedule it however you want. You use pictures and captions. There are all kinds of one-liners. Because I'm a moderator, and I got notes. So I know you've heard something here. So when you get the raw, use it. It's yours. If you showed up here today, we give it to you. Thank you for being here. And it is, I can't even tell you what time it is, but Kay, if you want to close us out, please do so. Theresa, thank you for being here, sweetie pie. We made it to 11:16, so that's saying a whole lot.
Yes, Lord, it is. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for allowing us to hear the wisdom that was shared this evening. Just wonderful time together. We're just so grateful, Father. As each one of us signs off, Lord, we take with each and every one of us your will, because it was planted in Trina's heart and her mind to deal with this village, to deal with this COVID-19, and to deal with the children and the families that need it. Thank you, Father, for her. Thank you, Father, for allowing Lady Theresa Giles to share her story, to share her wisdom, and how she has overcome and has produced 6 wonderful contributing adults to this world. Lord, thank you for everyone who contributed in their own capacity, their words that they shared, and those that were listening. Lord, let them too shine and be honored and grateful to everything that was received here tonight. Thank you. Blessings to all and always. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.